You're watching the Eternal Tournament series.
And we are back for round 2 of the Sealed Tournament sponsored by KCBandit. And we've got another fun little matchup here for you in this Sealed Tournament. So joining me in the booth to help break down this upcoming matchup between childroland and bobbans is Man on Mouse. How you doing, Man on Mouse?
Hopefully better now. I did some tinkering on the audio. Hopefully it is better.
Yeah, it's a classic standby of our tournaments that lots of small things go wrong and occasionally really big things go wrong. So if the worst of our troubles is that you're having a little bit of audio issues, I think we'll be able to handle that. So here we go. I think we're ready to dive into this matchup. childroland is on what we're calling 5-faction Combre, I want to say. It seems like he's mostly base Combre. That's most of his sigil bases, time and justice sigils, but he's got a shadow primal sigil lurking in there and some fire cards as well. So he's just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at bobbans here. Is on a slightly more straightforward fire time justice deck as we see this match start up.
Yeah, like a true top drafter, Roland embraced the rainbow here. And Bombans on a more straightforward deck, I'm not quite sure. Even though Bombans is only on 3 factions, he has some really tough cards to play. They're like Peacekeepers Pro, triple influence cards. Even on just 3 factions is going to be tough to pull off. He has some really spicy finishers though. He has Stone Skamol, double Flight Lieutenant, and a Sindog lurk in his deck to finish out the game.
Yeah, the one thing I'm concerned about with Bombans deck, outside of just, hitting the influence requirements, as you alluded to, is just I don't think he's playing enough power. By my count, he's only playing the 25 power plus 2 seek power, so 27 total. I really think in this format, most decks are going to be at least above 30 power, and especially in this deck where he's got 4 Xenon Guardians, 2 Flight Lieutenants, you're going to want to hit your power here.
Yeah, that's a pretty greedy approach here. Just running 25, you have so many ways to make use of your power in this deck. I really would have liked to see him at least 6 or 7.
Yep. In the meantime, Roland's already got the rainbow as he uses a torch on that first Xenon Guardian. Bobbans has another one to play down here, though, and opts to hold up Seek Power here, or hold up Finest Hour instead of playing Seek Power here, as it is his final unit. Wants to make sure he can keep it alive, especially he might get rewarded here, as childroland could use Gun Down, but instead goes with the Towering Terrazon.
I think he kind of has to. His hand is full of support spells. If his last unit dies, he's basically stuck with an empty hand.
And while Roland also has a Purify to go with that Gun Down, so a lot of options for him here as Bobbans uses that Seek Power, gets his 6 power, 2 of each influence, and jams in here, just telegraphs the combat trick, doesn't care. childroland, though, has the option to even double block if he wants to.
I think I would have double blocked here, yeah. Would have played around Victor's Cry as well. Like the double block wouldn't have cost him much if he just traded the Stranger. If Bombans choose to not use a combat trick here and just kill the Stranger instead of the Terry, that train would have been super fine as well.
Yeah, this still ends up working out pretty well for childroland, and Bobbans had to use 2 combat tricks there to keep his unit alive, and now the coast is almost certainly clear for this Purify or Gun Down to clean up the Xenon Guardian that we see here. So it ends up being like a 2 for 3 in childroland's favor. Bobbans just has a Dispel and Viper's Bite in hand. But yeah, you would have felt a little bit better if you didn't even have to use a removal spell there and your 2/2 stayed alive.
I mean, it does have an upside since he gets to keep his unit. His hand is kind of suffering the same problem, right? He has a bunch of removal and no unit.
If you're Bobbans, would you have used Dispel just as a cantrip there to try and dig for the power or more threats instead of saving it?
That's hard to say. I think, he has no action in hand. I think he kind of needs to cycle the Dispel here.
Yeah, I get wanting to save the silence for something more important, and this 2/2 isn't applying that much pressure, but I think you still just want to use Dispel as a cantrip in that scenario. But he finds the 7th power, gets down his Flight Lieutenant, but that's not taken to the skies anytime soon as it gets gunned down by childroland.
I mean, his patience gets rewarded here, I guess. He gets to silence a much better target than the Stranger. But If he doesn't find anything to play here, yeah, it really does not change his board position whatsoever.
Yeah, he gets rewarded in one way in that the silence matter, but he gets kind of punished because if he had dispelled the turn before, he would have found that 7th power and then could have played the 8th power with his flight lieutenant and held up safe return to protect it. But yeah, now he's just getting beaten down by a 1-3 and a 2-2, has no units to show for it, and just a Viper's Bite and a safe return. He certainly hit plenty of power this game, and well,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, if you're going to look for a unit, I think that's one of the best ones you can find here. Maybe his best draw would be something like Sindok, just because it's a huge flyer, but I don't think you're too sad about a Navani here. But, oh, man, Child Roland finds the big boy off the top to go with his Predator's Instinct in hand, and bombans is in trouble again.
I think you have to Viper's Bite here, right? I think you can go with the safe return. If you go
safe return, you die.
Then he's dead no matter what.
Yeah.
He takes 4. Well, here's 1 left, but I don't think...
Does he have any units with lifesteal potentially that he could draw? Well, nope, it's just Rakano Outlaw, and it looks like Child Roland's going to take this one down. I was going to say if Bobbins had 1 Bright Mace Paladin in the deck, so if he drew that, safe returned it, replayed it as a 4/4 lifesteal, I think that was one of his outs, but that's not what happens here. Child Roland finds a Suffocate, takes out the Outlaw. He didn't even need to, but just in case, and gets in there.
Yeah, and I mean, that might all come down to him not cycling the Dispel on this one turn. If he could have kept the Flight Lieutenant alive, he would have taken 1 way less damage and maybe pushed some damage back, and maybe would have been able to keep his Navani alive, depending on what Roland would have chosen to Predator's Instinct with the 7/7.
Yeah, Predator's Instinct with the 7/7, or at that point the Wasp also becomes live with Predator's Instinct, but that is the past, right? It would have been a different game, but it's not an easy game to play. Every little decision you make or not make matters, and we'll see as players do a little bit of sideboarding here. It looks like just seeing what other options they have before they go back to the next game.
Yeah, when I look, I think if bombans can manage to stay alive long enough, his top end is looking good for the most part. He has some really strong top end there. I'm not quite sure. Let me quickly check Roland's list here. What he has to offer.
Yeah, bobbans has some really cool stuff going on. And some pretty high power level cards here. Right in the middle of his deck, there's 1 Valkyrie Enforcer, 2 Copperhall Elites, Navani Warslinger, Peacekeeper's Prod, Praxis Displacer. That kind of clump of 3 and 4 drops is they're packing a big hit there.
Some solid mid-range right there, yeah.
Yeah. I think his deck's weakness in my mind is to flyers. Like, he's really good at pounding on the ground, has a tough time stalling in the sky. He can finish in the air with those 2 flight lieutenants, but outside of that, you've got just a Huru Fledgling and like a Loyal Watchwing. So that being a little light on flyers is a rough spot to be in Sealed, because we're going to see a lot of decks playing Primal and those Kobold Acolytes that we saw Ilya use so effectively in the last round. That's what I'm nervous of if I'm bobbans, but at the same time, you've got the tools to race that.
Yeah, and weak to flying units is a problem against Roland's deck. He has some good flying units in there. He's sporting Hatchlings, he has a Roosting Owl, he has Steelbound Dragons, and a 4/3 Elder. There are some flying bombs in there. I think Roland's deck, the biggest weakness of Roland's deck is his own influence. He needs to, he has a bunch of double influence in there, a somewhat wonky power base. So I think Roland's deck can easily lose to itself, really.
Yeah, but it has a lot of answers, so it doesn't mind stumbling too much. Real standout here. These players only had 4 Omens of the Past packs. Child Roland got 3 Archive Curators in his
really
pool.
Good, yeah.
That's about as good as you can get from Omens of the Past at Common. So he's rocking all of them, and they wear that Vodafone staff that's in his deck very, very well, turning them into threats eventually. So, yeah, he's going to dominate the skies in almost any matchup you can imagine between those 3 Curators and the Purify. You're packing a lot of silences there, and you have enough beef on the ground as well. So it looks like he's got a really well-balanced deck, but as you said, it's all about will he get his influence between just those three seek powers, a couple strangers find the way. You're going to see some ugly hands here.
It does, but on the other hand, the sealed format does lend itself to longer games, right? And he has the tools to make those games go long. Like you mentioned earlier, the Archive Curator is one of the best cards in the limited format to ensure a long game, because nothing is saying here ends the fun better than Archive Curator on turn 4. And usually the board is pretty stalled out once this bad boy comes down. And after that, yeah, his top end is not much behind bombans here. He has the twins, the Twinwood Sauropods. He has Warband Chieftain in there. He has also Ceremony Mask, one of the really swingy relic weapons in the game. And I think the plan is ready for game 2.
Yeah, looks like the challenge is out. The game is almost underway as we're resolving mulligans here. They're waiting probably for the go-ahead. Bobbins has an Awakened Student in hand, but no good way to cast it. I don't know if he mulliganed that or kept it, but I doubt he kept it, even if you have this castable assembly line. So it might have been what he mulled into, while Child Roland's got a really, really nice hand. Some good fixing, good curve going on.
Oh boy. Oh
yeah. Wow.
And he just drew the student as well.
Yep, he's opting to open on the Herald instead of student, though. Probably just going to play the student next turn. Fair.
Since he doesn't need to play the Amber Acolyte on 3, he can just use his student on 3-drop to protect it from some of the common limited removal, like Piercing Shot or Talon.
Yeah. Ooh, and Bobbans draws a Justice Sigil for turn, but gets some bad news. His next draw step is going to be a Plated Goliath, thanks to the warp mechanic. He knows that, and that means he's doing nothing this turn and next turn. Not where you want to be when you're facing down this imposing board state from Child Roland.
Yeah, this could be a really quick game here. Like, Roland's influence is perfect. He has a torch to back up and blow out any blocks Bombans is going to take, and he's going to curve right into his Warband Chieftain there.
Yeah. I think Roland was originally planning on playing a 3/3 Bright Mace Paladin that turn, but once he drew that Chieftain, plans can change very quickly in a card game. Always got to adopt and adapt to new information, and the information he got was, I want to get this Shadow Source. I want to play Warband Chieftain next turn, and that's why we see the Amber Acolyte come down instead.
Yeah, and Bowman's in a really rough spot here. He needs to draw like back-to-back time sigils to maybe have a shot here. Like get his... Yeah, and I think he needed it now. Like, if he draws a time sigil next turn, he can go Student, have it as a 2/2, then maybe jump one unit with a safe return. It all looks pretty awkward here. I think his best bet might be to just block with the Viper's Bite up, but
he doesn't have time.
Yeah, I mean, if you do
in multiple ways,
like I'm trying to figure out a way here. Yeah. There's a way for him to come back in this game. Yeah, I think I would have liked for Roland here to attack with the 2-1 as well. It's a pretty bad value play, but it takes out a jump blocker on the board for your big units. If he takes the trade with one of the 1/1s here, and that most likely would have ensured a kill next turn.
Yeah, and here we see Bobbans just doesn't have the influence. This is partially why we went with the decision to add 2 Seek Powers and 2 Diplo Seals to every seal pool to try and cut down on this situation happening. Now, I think there's also the factor that we alluded to that Bobbans also was maybe not playing quite enough power and took some risks going 3 factions. So there's all sorts of different things going on here. And plus it's a card game. But as we see, Child Roland just has all these, bashes it, and Bobbans goes down 0-2 to Child Roland.
Yeah, that was, even if Bombans had to ruin proper power there, that was a really strong open. Would have had a tough time beating it anyway.
Yeah. It's hard for anybody to beat those early Awakened students, even though Bobbans could have had his own. Child Roland had the torch for it, so I agree that probably didn't have a huge impact on the game, but certainly didn't make it feel any better. So we are working on diving into a backup match. It looks like we're going to line up Danibor versus Hythar. So we're... No, I'm getting word that... Never mind. That match also just ended. There's a lot of matches going on, but some of them can resolve pretty quickly, as we just saw there. So we're working on finding a backup match that we can dive into. There's a lot to go through, a whole lot of new players in this tournament, which is awesome. This is by far the biggest tournament we've ever run. And, with it brings a lot of excitement and also some hurdles to jump over.
Yeah, it feels really accessible, right? Everybody is on even playing field here. I mean, some players will get a stronger pool than others, but
yeah,
on the greater scheme of things, I think every player feels like he has a shot here at the limited tournament here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, limited and especially sealed can be the great equalizer, and some people get the impression that your sealed pool is everything. But at least coming from a Magic background, really great sealed players are just great sealed players. Like you'll see it at any big tournament that the cream always rises to the top regardless of their pool. The thing with this tournament though is you do have to own the cards. We're not giving you the cards. We're not opening the pack. So while normally it's easily accessible for everybody, in this case, you actually do have to craft the cards if you don't have them. If you open a Mokdo or something that you wanted, or Knucklebones, and you don't actually own it, you do have to craft it. So this isn't quite as accessible as maybe your normal sealed tournament. On the other end, it's also free.
I mean, you can just choose to not play it, right? If you open your Mokdo, you can just say, all right, I play like a Valkyrie Militant instead. It's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. It looks like we are having trouble finding a backup match. I've been sent like 2 different ones and they immediately ended. So instead, we're going to have a little alternate talk. Apparently, we got a new spoiler today. This isn't exclusive to our stream. This was one just thrown out on Twitter by Luis Scott Vargas, who is a developer and designer for Direwolf Digital, as well as just an awesome person overall. And it's a pretty fun card, so we're going to throw out our impression of it. It's Jotun Birth Song, 7-cost triple primal spell that says transform one of your Yeti into a 6/6 Jotun. Draw 2 different Yeti of your choice from your deck. I want to get your first impressions on this one, Mando Mouse, and let's do it from a limited perspective in draft. Are you pack one picking one this thing?
If I don't have a playset, yes. Apart from that, my first instinct is just completely unplayable. 7 power card that needs to have you a very specific, not only a unit on board, but a very specific unit on board to play a 6/6 and maybe draw your 2 cards. No, it's completely unplayable unless Yetis are somewhat of a very predominant unit type in set 3 and you see them everywhere, then maybe it is, but at first glance, I would say no way.
Yeah, if we're just going off of the common Yeti we know from sets 1 and 2, we're talking about Snow Chucker and Snow Slinger and Yeti Spy. Those aren't the kind of cards you normally always want to play in your deck, much less tutor up for 7. So, not a card that I'm going to be happy to see as a pack one pick one, but I'm sure at some point in the format I'll delude myself into trying out anyways.
Yeah, not only do you have to include those cards in your deck, you also have to keep them alive for some extended number of turns, like for 8, 9, 10 turns to get to your 7-drop. Seems pretty too many hoops to jump through for a mediocre payoff, really. Yeah,
there's a whole lot of marks you have to check off for this to even be acceptable to play, and I don't think it's realistic to expect that in draft or sealed.
Yeah.
But as far as constructed goes, maybe this is a little bit more interesting. You certainly can play a lot more Yetis. We already saw Thudrock get spoiled last week as a new Yeti toy, and Wump is always a card I'm happy to play with. And turning one of your Yetis into a 6/6, I mean, that's cool. They're normally small. Now they get bigger. But being able to tutor up 2 cards is really strong. It's just a very, very limited subset of cards you can look up. Your Yetis aren't known for having a wide range in terms of being a toolbox. But there is Champion of Fury. There's Yeti Pult. There's certain different effects you can find with this. Ultimately, is that going to make a tier 1 deck? I'm a little skeptical of that. But another cool thing to keep in mind with this card is it might not always cost 7. We did just see that one Yeti get spoiled, that whenever it dies, it gives you a trail stories. So you might make this cost 5 or 6, and then some other powerful things could be going on. So I'm not going to dismiss it just yet for Constructed. I think you'll be able to do some fun stuff.
I mean, from a lore-wise standpoint, giving us more insight into the world of Eternal, that card is pretty cool, right?
Oh, yeah. Figuring out that, or finding out that Yetis can turn into Jotun giants, that's pretty big. I wonder if Jaral Iceheart was ever a Yeti at some point earlier in his life.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, and it looks like we have found a backup match. So we're going to dive in. Covertkiller is still playing. We'll get his opponent in a sec as well. Covertkiller notably was I believe an invitational champion. I can't remember which season though. I don't know if it was 1, 2, or 3. Early on, he's a name you might recognize from back in closed beta and early open beta. So
that might have been even before my time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've played against him in tournaments, so that might tell you a thing or two. So we're diving in, and it looks like it's a TJP kind of good stuff thing here, as Find the Way has already been cast. He's got Lightning Strike in hand, Awakened Student on the board, and he's up against Pupicitus. All right, so another tournament player. So two at least in my mind, pretty big names here that we get to see throw down. I'm not sure what the current match score is. I'm imagining it's at least game 2. But Covertkiller's way ahead in this one. And I just got word it is tied 1-1.
Oh yeah, if this was a draft game and without looking at both players' hands, if I had to choose one side here, I would not need to think long. Just this student on curve on board with a Crownwatch cavalry to follow up against a current Skycrack influence. Skycrack traditionally has a pretty tough time dealing with large units. Apart from Permafrost and Polymorph, there's not much. Skycrack is all about the damage-based removal.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing here, Pupicitus looks almost completely straight Skycrack, a little bit of a Shadow Splash. So some of the removal he's packing, he's got an Alk Blast, an Ice Sprite, things like that. 4 Sky Snappers out of Pupicitus. We were talking about flyers mattering. He's got a plan here. Cloud Snake Breeder. A Cloud Snake Saddle. 2 torches. So Pupicitus has a pretty aggressive deck as far as seal pools go, and a Groundbreaker to go in there as well, just to kind of try and stall out the board. But this might be too much for him to overcome. Man, good top end from Pupicitus as well. Hatchery Hunter, General Azaleo, Towering Stranger, World Pyre Phoenix.
Holy, that is really good. All those Sky Snappers with an Azaleo back, that sounds really scary.
Yeah, it is, but this is a spot where Pupicitus is the one that's scared, as Covertkiller just has the board to himself. A 4/4 Awakened Student now crucially out of torch range, and we'll see it get followed up by the Tower Top Patrol instead of going Crownwatch Cavalry there. How do you feel about that?
Interesting that he chose to play for a more defensive unit. I mean, Pupicitus played a Shadow Sigil last turn. He might wanted to play around the Execute that we just saw here.
Yeah.
I think I would have still played around I think I would have walked into the trap there and wanted to play around Lightning Strike to not lose my student there. I think I would have gone for the Crownwatch there and went in.
Well, deck lists are public, so he may have looked up and saw that Pupicitus has 0 Lightning Strike, because there is 0, at least in the main deck. You'd have to look into his pool, but I think if Pupicitus had a Lightning Strike, it would be in the main deck regardless, especially on a 4 flyer build like that. But yeah, it pays off. He ends up not going all in on the getting blown out by Execute plan, and now has a 3/7 flyer, as we see Pupicitus. Okay, use the Temper on face to get a 5/3 on the board. But that puts it in Vanquish range.
You could get the 2-for-1 out of the Vanquish range. I think I wouldn't even bother here. I might want to maybe, because right now the Vanquish lets him push 2 points of damage.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd rather use the lightning strike here because Covertkiller currently is ahead on board. So the further he presses his advantage here, the less opportunities he will get to use his lightning strike.
Yeah.
And I think this might be a good spot here to make use of it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's very hard to use lightning strike when you're on the beatdown, and when you're very light on threats and heavy on removal. It's about making sure the removal hits the thing you want it most to hit. So let's see what the follow-up from Pupicitus is here. Will he have that crucial 6 point of power? Because he has some real strong cards that can come down at that spot. Or will we see something else out of him? Right now, Covertkiller's got a 4-turn clock moving forward with this 3/7 flyer. So Pupicitus has time to stabilize and turn this around. It's going to be tough to do through all of this removal that Covertkiller has, though.
Yeah, it's also the third game those two are playing. So Covertkiller knows about the big threats Pupicitus has in his deck, right? So that's another reason to save the Vanquish there.
The old draw second play from Pupicitus. Not the biggest fan of doing that. I usually like to draw cards first. But still, a 3/3 Elysian Stranger conveniently dodges the Vanquish, and Pupicitus misses on power there. So his hand is all action. Covertkiller knows that. We don't know exactly what's in their hand. We don't have a hand cam set up. But this Tower Top Patrol continues to pressure, and will probably do so for a while unless it gets removed, as the Spring Down can take out any other flyer that contests it.
Oh, that is really scary.
That is huge. And that actually is a big reason Elysian Stranger doing a maybe not so subtle amount of work in this game, getting that crucial 3rd point of Primal Influence, means he could cast Hatchery Hunter, and now Pupicitus has 4 3/3 flyers in his hand.
Oh, do you go for it?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think he needs to push all the damage here now.
Yeah, push all the damage here. And then is it a question of, do you use the safer turn here as well to make the Tower Top even bigger? The thing is, Pupicitus is just going to have chump blocks for it forever. It's more if you safer turn your Cavalry, you make your Tower Top Patrol 6 attack, where if it stays as a 3/7, it can be triple blocked, but you have Bring Down. So
that is interesting safer turn here.
He opts to safe return the Tower Top Patrol. I think using it on Crown Watch Cavalry is just better, but this way he has Tower Top Patrol as the blocker, I guess. I don't think that really matters, though, with your opponent at 4.
I think I liked it on because if he did it the other way around, he would have also been able to swing in with the Crown Watch Cavalry here.
Yeah. Yeah, if he had safe returned the Cavalry, he would have had now a 4/3 Flying Cavalry and a 6/10 Tower Top Patrol. There it is, the triple block on the Tower Top Patrol. Pupicitus is going to go down to 1. Bring Down will keep the patrol alive, so Covertkiller's still in a very, very good spot here.
Yeah, that is most likely game. Unless Pupicitus finds his second execute here or an Ice Sprite. Some of his heart removal, really.
Yep, another...
to get rid of the patrol.
Another flyer comes down. Nothing else. So if Covertkiller just hits the old A space here, it means he'll have total dominance of the skies, and Pupicitus will have to find something real good. It's not often you see a Hatchery Hunter for 4 flyers ever lose, but Covertkiller had, as we said, a very big lead in this game, and Hatchery Hunter is the kind of card you need to just catch up, and it did an admirable job of it, but Covertkiller just had too much backup for this flyer, it looks like, unless Pupicitus rips something real good here. Okay. The flying blockers.
Yeah. Here comes the Sky Snapper arm. Yeah, the Bring Down was really the crucial nail in the coffin there, blowing out that gang block in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ruined Pupicitus' hopes here to come back into the game.
Pupicitus has another execute and an Ice Sprite, but as we see, he doesn't find it, scoops it up, and Covertkiller takes that one 2-1.
Yeah, his best find might have been maybe a World Pyre Phoenix. He was at reasonable high amount of power, so he could have maybe just kept on jumping, replaying until it's big enough to tackle the patrol there.
Mm. Yeah, but didn't quite work out. So Covertkiller takes that win. Don't know what their records are at. We'll do bracket breakdowns at some point today. We still have a whole lot more Eternal action to go today. This is just round 2. We've got 8 rounds before we even cut the top 8. So the fun's just getting started. I think that's it for backup matches for this round, though. So we're going to take a quick little break, and we'll be back with round 3 pairings in just a few minutes.